Hello and welcome to LarpWright. Today I'm going to show you how to make a, let's call it primitive rawhide lantern such as this. The design for this is really simple. I decided against any kind of mechanism that would help you get the candle in or out, or make it easier to light the candle, because you can always just use a long stick, a long match or something. But like this, there are less components to the lantern, and it's also only as big as it needs to be and no bigger. So when I light this candle, it looks like it's really high up. But the first part of a candle always burns down pretty quickly because it's thinner than the rest of the candle. So I decided not to design for it, and after a few minutes it's fine. This won't win you any craftsman contests, but it's easy to make. You can whip this up in an afternoon, 1 or 2 hours, and anyone can make it. And really, that has always been my goal for this channel. When you watch me craft one of my things, I want you to go, yeah, I think I could do that too. That doesn't look too hard. And then do it yourself and potentially do it better than I did. So if any of you end up making your own rawhide lanterns, send me a picture of them. I'd be happy to see what you came up with. Anyway, if this is something that interests you, stay tuned, like and subscribe, and I'll show you exactly how I made this. We start by cutting some sticks to length. These need to be longer than the candles you're going to use, about 5 to 10 centimeters longer. And these are just freshly cut hazel sticks from my garden. And you will need 6 of these. Next up is to cut the wooden board. This is just a wooden board I'm laying around, about 20 millimeters thick. And I'm using, as so often, my trusty CD case to mark a circle. 2 circles actually. I need one for the top and one for the bottom. Into these circles you need to drill 6 holes for your 6 sticks. So select a wood drill bit that is a bit smaller than the sticks you have cut to length. And it's easier to drill this before cutting the wood out. One thing, you have something to hold on to, and the wood is less likely to break. One of the circles also needs a hole in the center. That one will become the top. To cut out holes in the middle of a board, you drill a few holes, 2 or 4, on the inside of it, and then you can get your jigsaw, your skill saw in there. Once the discs are cut clean them up with sandpaper and make sure they are good and smooth and have no nasty edges left. Then it's time to whittle the ends of the sticks down so they fit into the holes you have just drilled. To hold the candle, I'm selecting a massive drill bit here, and I'm just reusing the smallest disc that I've cut out of the top part, holes and all. No one will be able to see this, and I'm drilling a hole that is a bit smaller than the candles I'm going to use, not much. And like this, it should hold the candle tight and secure, but it shouldn't be too hard to get it in. And this part will just be glued with wood glue into the center of the bottom part. And while you have the glue bottle in your hand, next step is to glue all of the sticks into the bottom part. Get them in there as fast as they go, and then cut out any excess, anything sticking out of the bottom. Then it's time to glue the top part on there. This is a bit fiddly. A wooden mallet can help you here, but be careful not to break the top part. Because if you're just using the cheapest wooden board you've got lying around, it can be a bit brittle. If you want some tougher material for this, use some laminated wood, some plywood multiplex boards with cross-laminated woods, or just better wood. But for this lantern, be a bit careful and you'll be fine. Now that the skeleton of the lantern is assembled, it's time to measure the height between the discs and the circumference around the sticks. Now it's time for the rawhide to cover the sides of the lantern. I'm using goat's parchment or goat rawhide. I got a good deal for this in an internet shop for music instruments. This is a drum skin, so normally you would use it to make a drum or repair a drum. And I paid 30 euros for a whole goat skin. And I'm not using all of it for this one lantern. There's enough left to make 2, maybe 3 more lanterns of this size. So about 10 bucks of material cost per lantern, which isn't too bad. The other builds of rawhide lanterns that you'll find on YouTube and that I have watched before making this use dog chewing bones as their rawhide source. So in a pet supply store, you can find rolled up cattle rawhide, as a dog chewing bone. And if you put this in warm water, it becomes supple and flexible, and you can unroll it and then stitch it together and use it very much in the same way as the parchment. But that kettle skin is about 3 to 4 millimeters thick. And this goat's parchment, on the other hand, is not even a millimeter thick. It's like 0.2 of a millimeter, meaning this is much more transparent than the kettle rawhide that the other builds are using. You pay a bit more for this, sure, but you'll get a more useful lantern out of it. So I think getting parchment is worth the extra cost. In my test fitting here, I found out that I had made this a bit too long, so measure twice, cut once. You want this to cover all but like 1 centimeter, maybe 2 centimeters off the side. You need a bit of an air gap at the bottom of the lantern, and the rawhide should fit around the sticks, not around the wooden rings. So with strip cut off, this now fits around here as intended. This will also get a bit more flexible once you've soaked it in water. Incidentally, that is the next step in the build. Soak this in warm water for a while until it is rehydrated and becomes more flexible, more subtle and easier to work with. You could also do this before cutting, then it's easier to cut. But soaking the whole goat hide was not on my to-do list. And while the parchment is soaking, you can put a bit of linseed oil onto the wood of the lantern to make it a bit more robust to moisture, and so it will look a bit nicer. Once the rawhide is good and subtle, soaked through, fold it onto itself so you can pre-punch some holes for sewing, and they will line up perfectly using an awl here. And now it's easy enough to sew this directly onto the lantern. I'm using 2 leather needles here, one on each end of a length of leather yarn, waxed leather yarn. And you need a length that is about 3 to 4 times longer than the stitch you're making. And I'm making a simple cross stitch here. Use 1 needle and I go through the next hole on the other side. Then I skip a hole on the side it came from and pull it through. Use some pliers if it is too hard for you to pull through. Then take the needle from the other side, go through the hole I have skipped, and then through the next hole on the side it came from. This way you quickly get an even stitch. even more quickly if it's a video and you can speed it up. Once you are done doing this once, it's time to pull each thread tight using the awl and then secure it with a simple double or triple knot. Then, while this is still wet and you can still move it around, position the seam over one of the wooden sticks. The sticks will cast a shadow and so will the seam. No need to have both the seam and the stick cast a shadow, so I'm lining this up and then I'm pulling this to the top where it will stay once it is dried, giving me the air gap I need at the bottom. As a carry handle, I decided to use a bit of hemp yarn. I happen to have a huge amount of it. And you could drill some extra holes in the top to secure the carry handle to, but I decided just to secure it to the sticks, two sticks that align very good on either side of the lantern. It's totally fine because the lantern doesn't weigh all that much. Adjust the length of the yarn so you won't burn yourself with the heat from the candle when carrying this, but so it's not comically and impractically long. I mean, if it turns out you messed up, you can always change the length of this later. And then set it down overnight to let it dry. The last step is to oil up the rawhide so it becomes more transparent, like you are rubbing some crusty burger against it. I'm using Ballistol Universal Oil here because it is clear and it should stay clear when it dries. I'm going for maximum possible transparency with rawhide here. If you really wanted to, you could get some sandpaper and sand the rawhide down to make it even thinner and even more transparent. I think this is a good start. Yeah, let this dry, and this finishes the build. time to film the intro. As always, thanks for watching and goodbye.